This episode features the official ranking of the G2 Alliance server kingdoms, the largest and most powerful server pool. There's no doubt that the current ranking and betas are arranged from strongest to weakest, according to the in-game algorithm. Remember, this isn't my ranking, but the in-game ranking. And it was this algorithm that determined the positions of individual kingdoms. There's no doubt that the strongest alliance is listed at number 1. And each subsequent alliance below is slightly weaker than the previous one. There's a very good chance that the system will select opponents for matchmaking based on this ranking. It's hard to say how the algorithm works and what's taken into account. The game shows power, the number of merits, the number of units defeated and killed, and the last, 5th column is mana used for healing. On the first page, we have the number of angles with individual powers. More ranges would definitely be useful, for example, from 100 to 150 million power. Perhaps I could add the number of units healed with elixirs. Believe me, they also have access to this data, and I think it should also be taken into account. Honestly, I think it would be one of the more important tables, but the tables we have now are better than no tables at all. I hope these tables are implemented permanently and that they expand upon the statistics they show players. There are certainly many more factors taken into account that they haven't shown us here, to prevent players from exploiting this to their advantage, to prevent them from manipulating matchmaking to create easier opponents, easier KvKs. Although there are already kingdoms trying to get easy opponents by, for example, taking weak betas for their teams. But that's a story for another time. With the introduction behind us, we can move on to the official ranking of the best G2 servers in early 2026. Here's a spreadsheet based on this table, supplemented with server tags. One more thing needs to be mentioned at the outset. Of course, power is taken into account, but as you can see, even the developers decided that power isn't the most important factor. What can we witness? For example, in IR, we have alliances with 12, 11 billion power each. At number 34, we have the first example I can think of. They're supposedly only 12.8 billion power, yet the game considers them to be doing better than stronger kingdoms relative to their power, so they're higher and should face stronger opponents, even than us. Besides, it's clear from these statistics that they're doing significantly better. Then there's Kingdom 2011, for example. They also have more merits, more defeated units, more dead units, and they've used more mana. And they should be higher than us too. Why aren't they higher? I can't answer that question. You know, power alone means nothing. I'd rather watch what someone does with that power. So the more units they kill, the better they can fight, so they should be higher in the rankings. Of course, this isn't a zero-sum game, and many factors should be taken into account, but it's not my place to create some algorithm that will perfectly match the kingdoms. I just want to show you what we just received from the game's developers. I received a ranking based on which we can even predict the upcoming KvK. So, according to the developers, the first alliance in the game is WBA, number 2 YSS, number 3 NTS, number 4 NXW, number 5 SCL, number 6 RF, number 7 25 SW, number 8 25 IW, number 9 WO, and number 10 RAC. We'll scroll through the rest of these alliances so you can see roughly who's where. Our neighbors from server 17 are in 21st place. VP2 is in 38th place. Next to us, a place above us, is server 337, our ally in the upcoming KvK. So we'll see who we get, right? This could be a very, very interesting KvK. Of course, it depends on who gets who. FSK is in 53rd place. The betting starts at 57th place. The first betting tier in this ranking is server 540. We'll skip those betting tier as well. Of course, I realize there are some active players in Tier C or Tier D, but it would take too much work to add Tier C and Tier D, so we'll stop at Tier B because we'll be making predictions based on those positions in a moment. As for the scoring itself, it's very similar to what we see in ski jumping, for example. That is, the better the position, the more points we get. The weaker the position, the fewer points we get. Here, of course, we have the position, here, the number of points. And of course, we're working with what we've received in the game in this ranking. And if anyone wants more data, of course, I think everyone who watches this video knows it. Data from Boss Nasty. There's more data there, like activity percentage, but we'll focus solely on what we received from the developers and, based on the locations themselves, try to predict the upcoming KvK. Honestly, you can have the best data you can, but if the game uses a system, and let's be honest, the servers here are set up in some way, from strongest to weakest. We'll try to figure out this system a bit and try to match the kingdoms to each other. Regarding group points, we simply added the scores of all the servers in a given group. And based on the total points, we'll try to match these kingdoms to each other. So, without further ado, let's move on to KvK number 1. And from this score, we conclude that WBA should be matched against YSS with Rage. Both of these groups have the highest points. Of course, this score can be tweaked to make it even better than what we have here. You know, I don't know how much the developers appreciate betas, for example. I tried to give some points to the bettiers here, but as we all know, the TAs will always be the dominant force. Unless the difference between the bettiers Paragon and the latest IR isn't particularly high, in which case it might vary, but a TA should dominate here. In any case, they should definitely dominate in KvK number 1. So, you already know KvK number 1. Let's move on to KvK number 2. This might be a big surprise, but the results show that Milk and Hunt will face 21SW in Pod. And of course, would you like to see this kind of matchmaking? Let us know in the comments, and we'll move on. KvK number 3. In KvK number 3, we have alliances like NXW and MFD versus SCL, and a new addition, I think from G1 Aka. Honestly, I don't know what to say about them. They have a lot of points. They're 16th in the rankings, so they're higher than MFD. There's one thing worth noting in these groups. It's worth noting, of course, that we have a very small number of beta points, which only means one thing. The beta teams in these groups tried to avoid facing stronger opponents. So, that's just my observation, and let's move on to KvK number 4. KvK number 4 also promises to be very interesting. Here, NTS and OMG also picked a very weak beta, one of the last. As you well remember, we have 112th spots. They took the beta from position 111. We'll see if that affects their strength a bit. Of course, I can't tell you that. Remember, these predictions are just for fun, trying to guess what's hidden in the algorithm that will select opponents for KvK. However, based on these scores, NTS and OMG should end up in the 25th IW and in the TFS. Will that be the case? Time will tell, of course, so let's move on to KvK number 5. Here we have RFF and Inc., who also picked a very weak beta. And because of that, they have a lower score in our, I repeat, ranking. But who could they potentially face? They could potentially face Team X and HD. These two teams picked some of the stronger betas, so perhaps that will somehow impact the matchmaking and push them a bit higher, which we're seeing in this matchmaking. In any case, let's move on to KvK number 6. Here we have server 17, ID and FRX versus Raj and TDC. Honestly, I'm not familiar with server 194. although they're very highly ranked at position 22. We'll see what they're capable of. And let's move on to KvK number 7. In KvK number 7, teams like 30N and BPA will face off against WoW and I, of course. Let me know what you think of this matchmaking. In this ranking, they have a very similar number of points here, so who knows, maybe BNA also has similar stats. Let's move on to KvK number 8. KvK number 8 RAC and FG versus Seal and Lion. Obviously, at first glance, RC is very strong. They stand out very strongly, although they chose a rather weak ADIR, they chose average betas. Of course, average in terms of placement, right? I didn't determine that placement. However, as for the opposing team, Lion is definitely the alliance that fights very well. Even though their overall power isn't particularly high, they really fight as if they had more. And the developers see that. That's why they're in 27th place in the AIRs. They chose a very strong beta in the form of GDW, which gives them 54 points here, so that's why they're closest to RAC. We'll see if that holds true. Let's move on to KvK number 9. KvK number 9. We have Vikings and AD here. Their opponents are Team Vera and WW. The difference in points here is really small. The positions themselves are also, I'd say, quite close, so honestly, I think this is one of those matchmaking matches that really has a chance to work. Let's move on to KvK 10. In KvK 10, we have teams like NWE and OPB. I met both of these teams at the previous KvK, so I know what they're capable of. Their opponents, however, should be Sleepy Ice and Server 476. GSS. Will that be the case? We'll see. KvK 11. It's really tight here, but it turns out VP2 and Server 337 could end up on servers like SSG and WGL. We'll see if that happens. Of course, the difference in points is quite small, so who knows what the developers will come up with. VP22 is definitely closer to Team BNR. Here, the difference in points would be really small. However, if we're going from top to bottom, BNR is in KvK number 12. They consist of SG97, and their opponents should be ST and DTF. As for KvK number 13, we have an alliance like FSK and DK. The system assigned them a pair of betters, CFNC, and the very strong better NVD. Their opponents should be Degen and Beck. This KvK would be a clash of two teams that didn't have full alliance sets before the matchmaking phase began. Let's move on to KvK number 14, the last KvK. Here we have an alliance like S2AK and Fu versus Land and Wolf. While the difference in points is quite significant, with a 20-point difference, which at this level is about 10%, these are the bottom two teams, and if we were to match them with anyone else, the difference would be even greater. Therefore, according to this rating, these two teams should meet in the upcoming KvK. Let's zoom out a bit so users with larger screens can get a better look at what happened here. This is what our KvKs look like. Let's scroll through them again. We'll have 14 KvKs, 28 groups, and 4 teams. This is what it all looks like. Remember, the prediction part is just for fun. It's not official information. The official information is the ranking itself. Yes, you can access the ranking in-game, so anyone can verify it. As for the ranking itself, I think it's pretty good, but it's missing a few things I'd still like to see. Among them, units just healed with potions. Overall, I think this would be a really cool statistic. I'd definitely like to see the percentage of the strongest players' decorations added to this in-game ranking. For example, the potential garrison a given kingdom could have, and how strong a garrison a given kingdom could be. I think all players would be happy to have this information. We know perfectly well that in the current game, in the current meta, garrisons, or rally bastions, are truly crucial, and whoever has the better bastions, the better garrisons, most often wins. Therefore, whether we agree with it or not, decorations have certainly had a significant impact on the game itself, and all that's left for me to do is say goodbye to you. I know that some of the matchups might not make much sense to many people, but we've already witnessed some truly strange matchups from a player's perspective, so who knows what we'll get this time. I'm certainly curious to what extent what we have here will be accurate. Yes, to what extent, what percentage of accuracy we'll have here. I'll be saying goodbye to you here. You know what to do. Hang in there. Ho!